Hey guys, welcome back to another video in the r/EntitledPeople subreddit. I have 3 Entitled People stories for you today involving an entitled Aunt Karen who gets arrested, a mentally unstable entitled Kevin who gets arrested, and last but not least, a snooty rich Karen who doesn't get arrested, but she's a total bee with an itch. So I hope she does one day. But without further ado, let's jump into the stories, shall we? Despite the will, my Aunt Karen thinks my parents' property belongs to her. This happened almost 5 years ago, and I just got notice yesterday that my entitled Aunt Karen has just died, and I got a call from her husband asking me to attend the funeral next weekend, and I declined, as did my older brother, Mark, for purposes of this story. Karen was my mother's older sister, and she constantly interfered in my mother and her children's lives. She never liked my father and always tried to tell my mother that she made a mistake by marrying him. She didn't like the name my parents picked out for my older brother, and my great-grandmother died the day before I was born, and when Karen found out they were going to name me after her, Karen freaked out and said she wanted to name her potential future kid that, so my mother couldn't use it. Then she tried to talk her out of it by saying it's too old-fashioned and kids would make fun of me. Which they did, but for other reasons. She criticized both my brothers and my choice of friends, and even complained when I started playing softball because proper ladies didn't play sports, and if her daughter ever tried playing a sport, she would have her removed from the team. Spoiler, she never had children. The day after my 16th birthday, my parents drove on a business trip down to California. I live in Idaho. My dad said that when they got back, he would drive me to the DMV to get my license. He never did, because on the drive to California, they hit a patch of ice, spun out, crashed, and died. I was a wreck for some time after that. I didn't even want to attend my high school graduation later because my parents wouldn't be there. Their will split everything evenly between my brother and I. At the funeral, my parents, who owned their own business, production manager Tim, was talking to my brother, and my brother told him that in a couple weeks, he would step in and take over, and he was counting on Tim to run things smoothly until then, and help him in taking it over and learning the ropes. I had no interest in the business, other than it was a guaranteed summer job when I was growing up, so I stayed out of it and just collected profit checks until I sold my half to Mark, and he continues to run the business to this day. Mark told Tim that he should assure the employees there that their jobs were safe and that no major changes would be made. Then one day, Aunt Karen showed up and began putting her stuff in my parents' office, and when Tim confronted her about this, she said his services were no longer needed and he was fired. Tim called Mark up, and Mark went down with the family attorney, some police, and the necessary paperwork and had her removed, while she said the place was now hers because it was her sister's, so she was now the owner. As long as I have known her, she has never had a steady job and has had 3 husbands, not counting the man who called me. I never met him, and milked each one for as much as she could get until she divorced them. The next day, I was leaving for school. I walked, it was fairly close, about 10 minutes, and saw her car and a moving van parked outside. She said she was moving into her house, and then said in a sickly sweet voice that for a reasonable rent, she would continue to allow me to stay there until I graduated high school. I went in and called my brother, and he again showed up with the family attorney, police, and all the paperwork and had her removed from the property. I was at school, so I didn't get to see what happened, but that night, Mark gave me a business card for a policeman who I assume helped deal with all this, and told me that if I ever saw Aunt Karen on or near the property, to call that number and report her immediately. Don't even try to confront her or give her a warning. just call. I do know that the movers charged her to move her stuff into the van, drive across town, get turned away, and drive back across town and move her stuff back into her apartment, which she hadn't given notice yet. I got scared to the point that I didn't like letting our dog into the backyard when I was at school. I used to like putting her in the fenced backyard to let her play while I was at school. For a while, I just put her in the locked and closed garage, and then cleaned up after her messes when I got home in the afternoon. Eventually, Karen moved to Colorado, where I assume she met and married the man who called me and said that she had died and he couldn't find anyone from her family to attend the funeral. I chose not to tell him about her, politely said, "Sorry for your loss, but I can't make it." From discussions with Mark, he basically told him the same thing. Outside of myself, Mark, and Mark's infant daughter, I don't think she has any living relatives. I still own the house. Mark gave me his half as part of the deal where I sold him my half of the business, but I still sleep in my bedroom. I refuse to move into what was once my parents' bedroom, go to the local university, go Broncos, and still miss my parents and think about them every day. And even though I am 20, own a large home, have a lot of money in the bank, I would trade it all to have my parents back. I never understood why Karens think they're the next of kin because they're the deceased relative's sister. Aren't siblings pretty much the last option? No, you don't get to rip away any belongings from your deceased sister's children. How disgusting that someone would want to do that regardless. OP and her brother are so deserving of their parents' wealth, and OP and her brother's relationship is so sweet. They both seem really mature and lovely. I wonder what happened to Aunt Karen. Also, can I just tell you how elated I became when I read the sentence that Aunt Karen never had any kids? Can I get a hallelujah? I got a male Karen, a Chad, arrested. I, 20-year-old female, run a retail store with only one other person, another 20-year-old female, and some guy came in and cussed at her. Literally, the first thing he said to her was "F you." I took over and told the man, somewhere in his 50s, we wouldn't help him if he was gonna be swearing at us. He made fun of me for telling him he couldn't swear, and I just ignored him and gave him the solution to the problem he was coming in about. I watched him run outside to his truck, check his back seat multiple times, and after about 15 to 20 minutes, he came back in. He sat down and just glared at me. My coworker was helping someone else. I asked him what he needed. He said he'd tell me after our only other customer left. I told him he could tell me now. He stood up and said, "I will leave when she leaves." I responded saying, "Listen, I've been nothing but pleasant with you your entire time of being here, and you've been incredibly hostile. I'm giving you two options. You can either talk to me right now so I can try to help you, or you can leave. Because at this point, what you're doing, sitting down and saying nothing, is loitering." He was pissed. He got right up in my face to intimidate me and gave me the most evil look I've ever received. I stared right back at him. What's it going to be? He broke eye contact and said, "I'll leave." He walked out the door, but he did not leave. He sat in the front of his truck and kept looking through our window at us, waiting for our only customer to leave. I pointed this out to both my coworker and the customer, an older woman. The older woman told me to call the cops immediately, and that the man was not mentally sound. I was hesitant, but she was right. I called the cops, but in the meantime, the man kept checking his back seat over and over again. When the cops arrived, they said hi to me first, and then went outside to speak to the man. After about 5 minutes, I saw Mr. Karen trying to fight the cops. One of the cops came in later and told me the situation. So, he's going to jail tonight. There was something in the backseat of his truck he's going to jail for. He was actually a wanted man. Are you all good here? One of us can stay here if you don't feel safe. I told him we were fine. He had me write up a witness report. Makes me wonder what was in the back of the guy's truck. What the hell? Did I accidentally take a story from the r/no-sleep subreddit? That is so creepy and terrifying. As young women especially, sometimes you need to just live by the fuck politeness policy. Keeping yourself safe comes first. It sounds like that man was most certainly mentally unstable, and honestly, the old woman in the store possibly could have just saved their lives. I'm guessing he had a gun in the back seat and intended on using it, or maybe drugs, or a dead body, or all of the above. Who knows? But none of it sounds good. What do you guys think was in the back seat? Karen insults my wedding ring to my face. Backstory: when I first met the man who became my husband, we were not well off. He moved across the country to come live with me and had not a penny to his name. He proposed to me without a ring, which I was perfectly okay with. It was incredibly romantic. He popped the question simultaneously and is still one of the happiest days of my life. He promised when he was better off financially, he would buy any ring that I wanted. A while after our engagement, the day came where he surprised me by taking me to a jewelry store. He had saved a $5,000 budget, plus a little wiggle room for some credit if needed. He told me to go nuts. It was so fun and romantic. I tried on dozens of rings, diamonds, platinum bands, lesser gemstones, etc. when I saw a set of steel titanium rings. They were originally designed for the grooms, not for the brides, but I had never been a big diamond fan, and I preferred simple flat rings to mounted stones. I ended up falling in love with a super simple black titanium ring with angled grooves. It was gorgeous. It was exactly what I wanted. And best of all, they were cheap. Less than $200. My husband liked them too, so much that we got him a matching band. We decided to use them as both the engagement ring and the actual wedding ring. The story. This took place 7 years after I got married. I worked at a chain sandwich shop where we assemble the sandwiches in front of the customer. My store was next to a yoga studio, CrossFit training, and plastic surgeon's office. So we got our fair share of Karens and holier-than-thou rich people. It wasn't uncommon for somebody to drive up in a 100K sports car, toting a Prada bag, and sunglasses that cost more than my rent. They almost always came in to order the most picky, complicated subs, then complained about the price. We were quite used to these kinds of people, but this lady took the cake. Enter the entitled Karen and her bratty teenage daughter. They looked the part to a T. They proceeded to order the usual, complicated picky subs, asking tons of questions about the nutritional info of every item. To assemble the food, we wear clear plastic food service gloves. Because my ring is flush to my hand and won't rip the gloves, I had approval from the manager to wear it at work. While assembling this woman's sandwich, her teenage daughter notices my ring. "Oh, that's cute. Is that a promise ring?" "No, it's my wedding ring." "Are you serious?" "Yes, it's both my engagement and wedding ring. It has been for several years." Karen looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You have a cheap husband." I balked at her comment, but tried to remain professional. "That may be your opinion, ma'am, but I happen to like this ring. I picked it out myself." "Then you have terrible taste in jewelry." She then turned to her daughter. "If your father had given me a ring that ugly, I would have left him on the spot. Make sure your future husband gets you a ring that at least has diamonds in it." I was floored. I usually get tons of compliments about my ring. I never expected someone to insult it, let alone straight to my face. I was so flabbergasted, I couldn't even continue working on her food. I excused myself and went into the back and told my coworker to finish them up for me. I couldn't even stand to be around them. When I told my manager the whole story, he almost didn't believe me. We had to watch the security footage to prove it had actually happened. Never saw that entitled woman again. Glad she didn't come back. I still shake with rage every time I recount the story. Ugh, I hate people like this. What's the deal with diamonds anyways? They're not rare, they're not special. It's just a sales gimmick and basically a scam. If you like diamonds, that's cool. Just don't hate on people for not wanting them. I personally think there's better things to spend your money on, but again, if a diamond ring is what you want and your husband is cool with it, you do you. I would just rather my fiance and I save that money for a house deposit or rent or the actual wedding itself or candy. Oh, new Legos actually. But anyways, that is all from me today. I hope you enjoyed those 3 entitled people stories. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. I truly appreciate when you do, and I will see you in the next Reddit story. Bye!